So this is our last governance session. The goal today is to actually get as close to completion, perfection as possible. And seeing that Commissioner Roy is not here, and there is still a possibility that Cheryl O'Brien might join in December. You know, we don't know what happens then. I don't think that we have the ability to reach consensus today, but we want to just get as close to a final product as possible. So that's the goal. This is the last, kind of see where we are, figure out what needs to happen, and then just move forward from that point.
Okay, thanks. So I spoke with all of you before, and each of you gave me comments. And so what you'll see in the document, I'm sure you didn't have a chance to look at it, and we'll go through it, but there's a color coordination. Anything that's in blue are changes that we agreed to in April. Anything in green is this moved material that's part of an agreed upon change from April. Anything in red is a proposed change that one of you offered. Anything highlighted is a question. And then we've got one more page from that is comments that Commissioner Roy sent me last night and that I didn't have a chance to integrate into the whole. But I'll make sure that we look at them as we get to them. She also gave me comments on 2 of the proposed changes. So we'll try to integrate as much of her thought as possible. And if she comes back after her procedure, maybe we'll be able to go a little bit further. But I think most importantly, as Chair Concepcion said, is that we're trying to get as close to consensus as possible. If there are outstanding things, they'll remain outstanding, and then whatever the next step for the document is, it will be dealt with at that. Okay. And I know, Debbie, this is probably fairly new for you. I don't know if you've been briefed about this at all.
No, but I mean, I've had similar experience in the private sector, you know, working with boards and developing governance and policies, so I'm pretty comfortable with it.
So I think this was initiated under the first chair.
Yes.
This project was initiated under the first chair because there were points that lack clarity in the legislation, particularly authorities between the executive director and the chair. And so this document was an effort to clarify in a charter. So you'll see that. And I think one of the things that goes through was the idea that the executive director is responsible for the administrative agency and the chair has responsibilities relative to the commissioners, where the legislation says the chair is responsible for all activities in the commission. So that was the distinction that we started making. The original chair left before our first meeting, and we worked with acting chair Kim for 4 or 5 meetings. And then Chair O'Brien was appointed, and so she came in midstream.
Thank you.
I think that as much focus as we can bring to this, as much as we can wrap this up, is Susie, you might be aware we're about to go out to search for a new executive director. And having this document finalized at some point is going to be critical to that job search. Or at least a candidate who's worth our time to spend would be asking us about this. But if I can see it or understand it. So I said, kind of just places more emphasis on getting this done and getting this to a final version that we can all have agreement on.
And the other component to this, if we go down memory lane, we won't leave here today. But the other component of this is that there's been a rub with the executive director historically and the chair position. And there's been different interpretation of that rub per chair. So we've never been able to get we did get a legal opinion, I think internally. We haven't been able to get a legal opinion outside, right? But that's really the other piece of it. There's, like I always say, sometimes it's personality versus like what's in the statute. But that's been the big rub, is that some chair has interpreted in a way where the ED has this power and then the chair has this power, and then other chairs have interpreted, I have this power and he has that power, which has been the major rub. And I think a lot of the cause of, not a lot of the cause, but some causes that have spilled over into the agency, to be very direct. So I think that, to Bruce's point, it's important for the next ED, but also I think it's important to you as acting ED right now to really understand this document, because when we started it, Sean really went back and spoke to his team, and we brought in the team at some point, and we because this is really, how the team functions with commissioners and how the ED functions with the chair and commissioners. And I think a lot of stuff that we've seen in the past have been, well, when's this, whatever this says becomes what the ED translates to the team. So I think for you, it's very important to kind of take the time to really, understand it, but also go back to your team, however that is in terms of the finalizing part of this stuff. So.
And I think maybe I'm also looking forward to taking a look at how commissioners, as employees of the agency, how those two, the commissioner's responsibilities and being employees, are there any conflicts there? I don't mean personal conflict or professional conflict, but conflict in duties and accountability.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that, I was thinking about last night as I'm, coming to this meeting today. So, and how does that all play out between the executive director and the commissioners?
Yeah.
And the chair.
That's a major component of this and our conversations up until this point, because we are employees, but we're not.
Right.
In the same sense, because of the appointing authorities and,
Yeah.
The three appointing authorities being the only officials and authority that can reprimand or remove commissioners too. So there is a section here, but that was also another piece of the conversation that we've had.
Yeah, and the expectations for both roles. I mean, you have two roles, you have dual roles.
That's right.
So.
I think the other part too is, and I've said this before, in governance, it's not going to be new to my colleagues, but at some point, a lot of this document, we've been basing it off of scenarios. Because this happened, we need to do this. Because that happened, we need to do this. Emotions, personal emotions, and I'm speaking, just very candidly here. So I think for you as a fresh pair of eyes and not knowing all the stuff that we went through internally here, I think it will be helpful because, I keep saying this and I always say it, but this document is really, by the time we finish this document and implement it, we have a year left at this commission.
Right.
So, or a year and 6
Oh, because your tenure, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're like, let's say, so my point is that this really needs to,
It lives on. Yeah.
it lives on. So we need to think about, there's scenarios that happen, there's things that happen. Our positions are very political. They're very politically charged. And commissioners who come after us are gonna be appointed as well by our appointing authority. So I was like, that's a lot of what has gone into this as well, but also like us thinking strategically and, thinking, how can we leave something so that the agency, the next commissioners and the next ED can really have a line in the sand, a clear path, but also the team at this place can have a clear path, So that's really, I think, right?
That, for me, that's been key, the first group of commissioners, let's face it, it was a sprint. It was how do we build a foundation, get that first licensee open now as we find ourselves in a more mature state of the agency's life? A lot of this tension on authority or responsibilities, how commissioners even engage with staff,
Yeah.
which was completely new to them when the three of us came and we're like, we don't know what you've all built. So how do we engage with you and learn and do our jobs? And so this document is started at the 30,000 foot level.
Yeah.
It's got really granular.
Yeah.
It's kind of reached back to a higher height. But I would say our sessions have been, a learning experience also. Like, how does this work? Why did this not happen when I came across that particular example? So for me, it's been a great learning process. It's been a good vetting process. It's been a good let everybody just kind of spill out their thoughts and emotions on the table.
Yeah.
And then pull something together that we can finish living by, our staff has expectations about, and it's a good roadmap for whoever
Yeah.
follows us.
That's right. And it's been the only time since we started that we as commissioners were in a room with the executive director outside of public meetings, even though this is a public meeting. But anyone can say, oh, we've taken a while to do this, but this has almost been our training,
Yeah.
in terms of, hey, Sean, so, how did this work? How does this work? So that's been a lot of the time.
So here's my proposal. I think it's important for you to hear kind of some of the backstory as we go through the sections. And at the same time, it's really important that we go over all the comments that are there. So I'm inclined to start at the beginning because that kind of sets the pace, sets the tone. But then I'm likely to jump, for example, to the media section, which has to be completely, there's a lot of comments on there. I'd love to be able to do that section before lunch so that during lunch I can rewrite it and give you a new draft. So let's start at the top, and then at some point I'm going to say, okay, we finished that section. Let's jump to communications before lunch. All right. So there are no comments on purpose, but I think, Debbie, it's worth your taking a minute to read it so that you can see what the original thinking is. And as you can see, one more thing, the way I showed the issues, each section in the agenda is what was tentatively agreed, what was discussed and revised. So it should be tentative agreements, and where are there changes that are necessary.
And the green is that you moved it?
It's just moved,
Okay.
like, so for example, if you see the bottom of page 1, that's now number 1.
I see.
And that was, so anytime you see green, it was just an agreed move it up usually. There's a tentative agreement on purpose. Is there any question or concern about that needs to be addressed? It's pretty straightforward. Just reaffirming that. Okay, and then background. Background also was tentatively agreed. The only change that we made back in April was to move what had been 3 up to 1.
Can I go back to purpose just for a second?
Sure.
Just need to read it because
Sure.
the first time it kind of sounded a little clunky. Foster a positive, productive, and cooperative work environment based on mutual respect, to provide further guidance concerning the Cannabis Control Commission's duties, commissioners, and the executive director in collaboration with staff
You break it up.
have established this charter.
Right, so it's to provide further guidance concerning the cannabis control, to foster a positive, productive, and cooperative work environment based on mutual respect, and to provide further guidance concerning the Cannabis Control Commission's duties, commissioners and the executive director in collaboration with staff have established this charter.
Should we put a period after duties?
Good.
That's where
Yeah.
it sounded a little wonky.
And just take out the rest of the sentence.
No,
No, no.
the rest of it in.
Yeah.
I'm just saying after,
So make it 2 sentences. So
Yeah.
put a period after duties and then say the commissioners and executive director.
But that's not a complete, the
Not a
first one,
complete sentence.
yeah, fragment.
okay, okay, all right.
Oh,
Now I-
It reads,
Now I
it
read it,
reads,
right.
the last sentence
Yep.
reads a little off.
yeah, the
Yeah.
comma is, okay,
Yep,
no
Sorry
change.
about that.
Okay, no
No, good.
problem. Okay, background, anything on background? Again, we've been over that section a number of times.
And this stuff was lifted that we just right from. March.
Anyone need another minute on background? Okay, so this is a sustained kind of agreement on that section. Let's go to roles and responsibilities. So on the commissioner section, the blue are agreed changes. Commissioner Roy had a question, 1E. He's asked the question, it's a question, and E begins in relation to the administrative agency, the commissioners, and then there are the items 1 to 6 beneath it. And she asked the question, do commissioners have no responsibility for the administrative agency? All power lies with the executive director. Is that too much decision-making authority for the executive director?
And go up top a little bit in, the other blue one, maybe on each, 1 second.
Okay.
Question about 2 at the top of the top. May delegate responsibility for the execution and implementation of commissioners' policy decisions to the executive director. Can you define policy? Is policy going to be the policies that the commission sets forth in regulating the marijuana industry, or does that also include policies regarding the internal processes or the internal operations of the agency? I don't know, is that a definition? Is it both? It seems a little, yeah.
In some ways, you're asking the same question that Commissioner Roy was asking, because the way it's just related. I'm not saying it's in the same place, but if we look at the executive director responsibilities, which begins on page 7, number 5A is the executive and administrative head of the commission, and that was interpreted as the executive director is responsible for the administrative agency. So it's kind of a similar question. Are the policy decisions external decisions? Are they internal decisions? What's the authority of the executive director relative to the commissioners, or the commissioners relative to the executive director concerning the administrative agency?
I mean, we've divided it where the executive director has the administrative duties of the commission. Thinking offices, hiring people, right, all those things.
So I have a different read of the May Del, this section. And maybe, fellow commissioners and Susan, you might help jogging, my memory also. It was to incorporate sort of how things are delegated to the executive director. So I guess, now you or any other person who's in that role, there is a list of delegated responsibilities that ordinarily would lie with the commissioners. But we have given that authority through a delegation to the ED. And I believe like this section was speaking to that.
But also I think the clarification that Debbie's asking, like, because it starts us off as policy, as policymakers, I'm reading this as policy. But I think, Debbie, maybe I'm wrong, but like, you're also talking about granular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm trying to clarify, this is it was only to speak to that, to the delegation. So the
Oh.
authorities that would ordinarily lie with the commission.
So maybe so maybe something in here has to go see the delegation document of executive director.
Maybe, because it's clearly, it's not
Yeah,
clear.
or an addendum or something.
Have you seen that document, Debbie?
No,
You've never seen the delegation's power? Not yet?
no, I don't think I have it.
I think this sentence just says that the commissioners may delegate their authorities. I think that's all this is saying, which you've done. And
You're right.
yeah, I think that's all this is just saying is that that you may delegate some of your responsibilities to the executive director.
But it seems like that, so it's not clear when you read it.
Yeah, I'm dwelling on the commissioner's policy decisions because there's some regulatory or maybe all regulatory policies are not delegated to the ED. You know what I mean? I just see that as a,
Beyond.
yes.
And that's also like a little bit of, we gotta be clear with that.
Yeah.
So that anybody, if you're reading it, you're like, wait, can I do, what can?
Right.
I think one is the document that the first commissioners created where all the delegation powers to the ED, one, that's an important document to either have as an addendum here. And Debbie, I think you need to see that document as well. So you know what's probably-
But I think that might be changing. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, there's always a possibility that it could change. And
For now, it is what it is.
well, I think what Susan is trying to say though is you don't want to put something here, an addendum or refer to
Oh,
something.
if it changes, got it.
Or if it no longer exists.
Got it.
Even if it no longer exists,
Got it,
there's
got it, got
still the ability for commissioners to
Got it,
delegate.
got it.
I also think that the law speaks to the delegation. I'm sorry, Susan.
No, that's-
I know how to control the.
I'm wondering if any change is required in that, or if, may delegate responsibilities and execution and implementation of commissioners' policy decisions.
The other thing is the implementation of our policies and decisions, that is the core the function of the ED as it relates to the commissioners.
Right.
And we're doing that now.
That's what, so every time we have a public meeting and we're saying, okay, we want to see this, or you're right, in the implementation of regulations. So I almost think it should be two lines, one that
Okay.
speaks to the implementation of policy, other that speaks to our ability to delegate our authority to you.
But so this is the roles and responsibilities of the chair. Sorry, of the commissioners. So maybe it's more simple, may delegate responsibilities to the executive director. Because you're right, execution and implementation of policy is the executive director's job.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So is it just may delegate responsibilities to the executive director?
I think that's fine.
Does that work for everyone?
And that does imply that commission is doing the, commissioners are doing the execution and the implementation.
Bruce? It looks like you're still thinking about that.
So I'm just wondering, I always looked at this as really kind of narrow. And feeding in off what one says, so we deliberate on and make policy decisions in the overall direction. So I would equate a policy decision being I think the one that we've had recently.
About the office right now, the Boston office.
No, think about micro businesses,
Yeah.
because that was a policy decision that was voted,
Policy decision
and it was a directive
to
to staff.
staff, ED included, that next time we do a promulgation. So I was probably looking at that as a much more narrow focus. And that's why the language around may delegate responsibilities to affect that policy decision, as opposed to some of the broader responsibilities that sometimes the ED can take on. So I saw this as a much more narrow window.
And if you think about the delegation document, those are a lot of different responsibilities, right?
What would be a way that you would interpret this that we could cause some confusion? And give us an example. Choose the Boston office.
So for example, right now we just started the chapter 180 process where we began internal discussions. We pulled the team together. We've worked on an outline as to how we're going to get those policies done. And but the execution and implementation of chapter 180 is not commissioner's responsibility. So the way I see this, execution and implementation, are you really delegating that to us, or is that a part of our responsibilities already?
Right, it's already a responsibility.
Yeah,
It's not.
There's no need for the delegation.
And then policy decisions that's because it's chapter 180.
yeah.
I think that it's just may delegate responsibilities to the executive director. We think that's
I agree.
clean.
Or should it be we delegate certain responsibilities because it's not going to be, there's certain responsibilities that will not be delegated or will never be delegated.
That's the rationale around the word may.
Or can we, sorry, go ahead. No, or can we move it? Because to Bruce's point, it's under as policymakers, right? In terms of policy, chapter 180, micro businesses, social consumption regulation. So it's under policymakers. So maybe we can move it in relation to the administrative agency and take out the word policy. That,
Say that one more time.
And that was my question mark on what I wrote on here. Is this administrative or is it
Yeah.
really?
this may be an administrative comment, like under E, in relation to the administrative agency / the commissioners or comma the commissioners, because under the section that it's now, it's under policy. Yeah, it's broader, it's policy. Like if you're reading this in this section, even to Bruce's point, the top one in terms of policy decisions, the overall direction of the commission and the medical and adult use cannabis industry. And then that sentence follows, this is a specific policy sentence, not a what office our commissioner is gonna sit in.
So the proposal is to move Romanet 2 to become Romanet 5 under E. May delegate responsibilities and execution and implementation of commissioner's decision to the executive director. Is that?
I don't know, I'm just, I don't, maybe it's we create another sentence, but I'm just,
I think I got a little confused.
So, Commissioner from Margot's suggestion was, since the confusion is around the word policy, and it's under the section of commissioners' responsibilities as policymakers, move it to this, to letter E instead, which says, in relation to the administrative agency, the commissioners may delegate responsibilities to the executive director.
or define policy decisions.
I just think that's just gonna be a bear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I know, but
I think the most important concept here is that you're saying that the commissioners may delegate responsibilities to the executive director that are perhaps statutorily
Right.
right.
authorities of the commissioners.
Should we just spell that out?
Right.
Should we just say that? And I don't agree with changing
Yeah, maybe
the
just,
position, because those delegations are statutory. They fall into policy. So maybe just saying may delegate responsibilities that.
yeah, maybe
I
recreate,
wish I remembered the phrasing that you just said that are statutorily, that are ordinarily statutorily, the responsibility of commissioners, just so that it's very clear what we're talking about.
right, that's the goal, is whatever to make it clear.
But I also agree with taking out delegating the implementation of our policy decisions, because that makes no sense. Because the ED's role is to implement our policy decisions. Maybe you bring those.
It's, I do. These are microphones.
Okay.
French.
How about this? May delegate commissioner statutory responsibilities to the executive director. May delegate, commissioner statutory, how about, let's do it, may delegate statutory responsibilities of the commissioners to the executive director.
I think that's clear. Debbie, when you hear that, is that clear?
Say it again, no, please.
Are you keeping this under B or are we adding it to E?
B.
Okay, so this is amending
Two.
a part of B.
So the proposal is may delegate statutory responsibilities of the commission to the executive director. This is exactly what you do. Thank you. Wow, those are beautiful.
I don't. Thank you, Debbie.
This is just my treat, nothing else.
Yeah, for me, I'm comfortable with the language in two. I understand that maybe we
As
need
is.
to build additional language into E in relation to the administrative agency. But so I'm thinking about the policy-making role. And, whether it's if the five of us take a vote on a policy,
Chapter 180.
chapter 180, there are votes that become policy, right?
Yeah.
Like how we move final promulgation, but at the same time, to Debbie's point, execution of that execution and implementation of those policy decisions, comfortable with saying we may delegate that to the executive director. I think for all intents and purposes, we always would.
Right. It's implied.
It's implied, but I understand the second piece of this is delegating responsibilities kind of baked in statute. And that, I think, I'm more comfortable with addressing under that administrative agency piece. I just see the policy piece is very narrow, not narrow, but very specific to a vote that we all take. Still having the flexibility to delegate the ED to go and implement that policy.
So
And I think that's separate from the administrative head and some of the responsibilities that are guided by statute.
so it sounds like your counter proposal is leave 2 as it is. And then in E, add, may delegate statute responsibilities of the commission to the ED.
Yeah,
Is that your proposal?
yeah.
Okay. Comments on that?
So leave Romanet 2 as
As is.
in E.
So a new Romanet 5 that would read, may delegate statutory responsibilities of the commission. It's really of the commissioners to the ED.
Because the ED would not be delegating, we would be delegating. So I don't have, so
Right, so E starts in relation to the administrative agency, the commissioners.
okay, got it.
And then it's the commissioners, that's okay, may delegate, maybe the easier way to say is some of their statutory responsibilities to the ED.
Yeah, I think the statutory word is, I think that may be helpful for the concern you brought up.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because you're not delegating the administrative.
Right. It's all regulatory stuff.
So there's a new Romanet 5. May delegate some of, and it starts as the commissioners, so may delegate some of their statutory responsibilities to the ED.
So then when you say a new 5, right, taking out 5 now, the 5 that's in there now?
Romanet 5 under E.
Yeah, conduct assessments and performance review.
Oh, sorry, I'm 7. It's a new
what I
7.
thought. Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I'm like, right.
My eyes were, I should just
Okay.
keep my glasses on. Okay, new 7. Okay. And is there anything else about, Commissioner Roy's question about, should the commissioners have any responsibility for the administrative agency?
Can you go through D really quickly? Just D and, just so I can read it.
You want to take a minute to read it?
Yeah,
Sure.
so it all, it all flows.
Yep. This is terrible to have these right in front
Sir.
of me. I know.
Yeah.
There's people in the building that can eat these. They're like so good. It's a silly question, but in D, Romanet number 3, accredit education providers to operate RVT. We're saying the word accredit because we vote for these companies to operate. But I mean, technically our team does it, which is okay. I mean, that's still us, but that's the same thing, right?
I think that was statutory. I think that we were just lifting language there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious where. That's a pretty heavy word. We have credit. Bruce, you know why I'm saying that? It's because the RBT, I'm like, we vote on it. Credit is such a heavy, such a big endorsement.
But I
It's
think
coming over
your vote might do that.
Yeah,
The vote
we are,
might-
right, because they voted, yeah, I know.
Is it license? Is it a credit? Is it?
You know I'm saying it because of the experience that you've had at RBT.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking some of them are, so I'm like, wow, we accredit them, we do, we vote them to be in business.
I think something else.
So I'm gonna interrupt because we've talked about all of these things. And if we re-talk about the things that we've already gone
Yeah.
over, because we forgot, we're never gonna get through the actual juice.
So I hear you, I just wanted to, I hear
Yeah.
you, Susan, but
So I'm gonna just try and move
We've had
us
a lot
more.
come up between now and April.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
But this is our last meeting.
We-
This is our last meeting, so
Yeah.
we've got to get through the things that were problematic since.
no, we will, but I think now we've learned a lot in the last 6 or 7 months.
That's right.
Where some of this stuff, like, even if this was lifted, I don't remember right now, so you telling me that it's lifted and in statute, it's okay. But our RVT training, you know, we do vote on them to be in business, the accredited, I'm like, that's an interesting way to put it, so. And Bruce knows why I'm saying it, just for some stuff that has happened the last few months, but I hear you.
All right. Is there anything else on the roles and responsibilities of commissioners?
I'm gonna read E now, I don't know.
Susan, I just want to make sure we have the right notations. So we hire the executive director, but I find that in chapter 55. Not chapter 10.
Okay, the former PC went through these, but if it's not correct, then we'll have to have someone run through them again.
It just,
Our new GC can go through.
our new GC can go through it, but chapter 55 says the commission shall appoint an executive director.
Okay, can you give me the full citation?
Sure, it's chapter 55.
Hold on. The citation is correct. Chapter 710, section 76, J. It talks about appointing an executive director.
Oh, okay. Yep. Sorry.
Commissioner Stubbins, just to clarify, chapter 55 became section 76 of Mass General Laws.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks, Mike.
great. Anything else on commissioner responsibility?
Yeah. And then are we answering Commissioner Roy's question? I just want to be mindful of her notes.
Yeah, the question is, should the commissioners have roles related to the administrative fields?
Did she say anything else about this one to you?
That's the whole thing. She didn't mention anything in particular. That was her whole comment.
Broad comment.
Yeah.
I said it's a broad comment.
Okay.
Just 1 second. I don't think I can understand it without having a conversation about it because it's sort of asking about the overall document.
Right.
Mm,
Okay, maybe if she comes back, we can come back. that.
I'd be curious as to, and I look at, in relation to the administrative agency, and I look at 1 through 6 or now 7 is kind of where we affect checks and balances on the ED. But, and again, ED clearly having the authority, the administrative responsibilities. I'd want to get some clarity from her, like, what does it relate to the administrative agency? What else do you want to have us do?
Okay. All right, let's go to commission chair.
Can I just make a quick comment on that?
Yeah, of course.
So in thinking about delineation of duties and segregation of duties, typically the board does not have any administrative responsibilities when it comes to agency operational matters. So the fact that the executive director is the one that hires and fires and, discipline the employee population. This is really all about employee performance and agency performance. And this is where the accountability on one of the responsibilities for the commissioners is that would be an administrative responsibility of the board, is to hold the executive director responsible for or accountable for making sure the administrative duties are carried out within the agency, and not having any connection or responsibilities or authority around the administrative operations of the agency. So that has been my experience with boards. So I don't know if that helps a little bit, but
I think that had been the working assumption about the document.
so maybe her question is answered.
I think that we can have that answer for her
Yeah.
and see if she has any details, anything in particular, any responsibility in particular that she may have wanted to address.
So although there is no direct, responsibilities for the commissioners administratively, they are the ones to hold the executive director accountable for making sure that the administrative work of the agency is carried out. And that may be part of the executive director's goals and performance evaluation.
So we move to the section on the commission chair.
Before we do, Debbie, I'm hearing what you're saying. And I see the value of speaking to that here. So you're saying sort of being the checks and balances, saying that it doesn't say anything about. It sounds negative when I say it, but any sort of disciplinary responsibilities or authority of the executive director.
We do have an accountability section.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
There we go. I'm done.
We'll get to that.
Very good.
Yep, I know. It's amazing how much I know this document.
Is it in relation to the administrative agency? Obviously, we have the authority to hire the executive director. I don't know if we stipulate that we can let go or release the executive director.
Hire and fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the board can do that.
Commissioner Roy has always said that, right? The EDs serve at the pleasure of us. I
Yeah.
think it's good.
So that's speaking to what you were saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that check and balance. That's a big check.
And the other reason that you really want to have, a clear description or definition of delineation of duties or separation of duties is that it would be confusing to staff to have, commissioners, managing staff and executive directors, the executive director managing staff. That's gonna be confusing for staff.
Okay, Commission Chair. And the question is really on.
Wait, so are we putting something in there?
Hire,
Sorry.
fire.
We're adding
Oh,
and
hire and
hire.
terminate.
Okay. Hire and.
What
fire.
about, what about suspend, hire, suspend, terminate?
Should we just make a sentence that's like more higher and
Do you have
disciplinary?
authority to suspend an executive director?
Yeah.
Okay, Eve.
Could,
Mhm.
We have accountability elsewhere in the document you said, right? So that can also be thrown in there.
I think this is under the commissioner's responsibility.
Yeah, hire and fire.
Do you want to say hire, suspend and fire?
and terminate.
Or
Hire.
could be, may make decisions regarding the capacity of the ED to carry out the functions of the executive director's office.
Something that sounds better than hire and fire.
Yes, it's
I was gonna say.
something like,
Yeah.
oh, please, yeah.
Part of me wants to be as concise and clear as possible, though. So I understand,
Feel we're.
And you could say that, you could preface that with, you could preface the fund hiring and firing with that statement, which means or includes the hiring, the termination, the hiring, disciplinary and termination of the ED.
Termination sounds a little more professional.
Hire,
Or
discipline.
separation is a little softer, but
Termination.
Termination.
Yes. No, I think we need the word we need the word
You need
fire.
that.
Yeah, okay,
But-
so what's the proposal? There's been a lot of words. What would you like that to read?
Chair, does termination, live
well,
up?
terminate and termination, either
Okay.
way we're saying it.
So it says hire and you want to add
Hire,
suspend
suspend,
and
and
terminate?
terminate.
Either suspend or discipline.
I like
Some
this. I like
discipline,
discipline.
so
Yeah.
hire, discipline.
Discipline.
Terminate.
Terminate.
Suspension can be discipline.
Mhm.
All right, moving to the chair. There's where you see highlighted at C, there's a question on coordinates commission work.
Take a few minutes to read it.
And then while you're looking at that, B is just moved up. B had been K, so that's just moved up. And the other proposed change is at F. Designates a commissioner to act as chair for public meetings in the chair's absence. The chair has designated the secretary to serve as chair if the chair is absent and has not previously designated another commission to act as chair for a public meeting. If a chair is removed or suspended by the appointing authorities, the remaining commissioners will elect an acting chair. And Commissioner Roy, before she left, said something has to be done to avoid a deadlock.
What was the question on C?
Commissioner Camargo, could you tell us what your question was?
Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna start from the beginning of the section. I think I highlighted it just from reading it and kind of going through it with obviously the time that we've been here. Coordinates commission work and project assignments among commissioners. I guess my thought was like, what does that mean? Coordinates commission work. Is it commission, not commissioners, and project assignments among commissioners, coordinates commission work.
Commission work, I think read the whole thing, coordinates commission work and project assignments among commissioners.
Okay. Go ahead.
So an example of that, again, go back to chapter 180, because that's my biggest experience here. When the commission had to promulgate those regs, right? And somebody had to coordinate that. So that was the chair's responsibility. So that's how I'm seeing that. I don't know if
Mhm.
that,
I read this as what the chair directs in relation to like what the other commissioners. So reading the full thing, I feel like that example is a little bit separate from what this is speaking to. It's about coordinating the work and assignments among the entire board with the
So-
commissioners.
so holding people responsible for their own assignments. Yeah,
And this was if I remember clearly, we've had so many meetings, but this was another
Mhm.
place that we spoke at length about because it was around sort of the chair's authority as it relates to other commissioners. And I just remember we landed here as being sort of where
Yeah.
what the statute seemed to state.
Right, because the statute says, and I don't remember the exact language, but something the chair has responsibility for all.
Over all affairs of the commission.
Yeah.
Right, and so this was how we were defining that again as we tried to structure it, that the chair was responsible for the commissioners and the executive director was responsible for the administrative agency. Commissioner Camargo, has that clarified things for you?
Yeah. It's just, I know that this is,
so does that give the chair supervisory responsibilities over the other commissioners?
In all honesty, the way I understood it was that the chair gets to decide, this is the project you're going to work on. I think that was kind of the underlying aspect of this.
this is like,
This is better.
this is big, but it's also personality based because I've already worked with 4 chairs, including Chair Concepcion. So it's like, I can say that it works differently per personality, per motive, per, this is one chair could say to you, hey, I like Chair Hopkins said to me, hey, I want you to be treasurer. Like, okay, like I was new, kind of just got in here. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I want you to take on this thing. It's like, okay, sure. He asked me and I'll do it. I could have said no, but I said yes.
I think, this is political power.
Yeah.
It is, and different chairs are going to be.
Use it differently.
Use it differently,
Yeah.
and then it's what is the statute,
Correct.
what power does the statute
Correct.
actually give
Correct.
them?
You see, I feel like in reality though, it's not. Because commissioners always maintain the ability to say
No.
no.
Correct.
And the chair is not the supervisor of commissioners.
But the rub is, oh, I asked Commissioner Camargo to, I'm using me as an example,
Yeah.
to do this and she said no,
Right.
or,
And then that's what I'm saying, like, I feel like it's not, it doesn't,
Can't be handed.
it can't, so I don't see how it can be effectuated.
Can't be managed.
you see why I highlighted it? Because when I reread this whole document, I was like, I know that this is a big, a big situation, especially like,
I would, I also recall there was a lot of discussion about the chair being aware of what other commissioners might be doing. So I think that's kind of where we landed on coordinating,
Right.
like, okay,
Yeah.
you're doing this,
That's right.
I understand you're doing that. But when I look at that, it's like a little bit too much authority being placed with the chair as it's written here. I certainly believe the chair can assign projects to commissioners or appoint commissioners to do certain projects. And maybe that coordinates, we should, tweak it a little bit to say, and shall be
knowledgeable of.
mindful of other
Yeah.
individual commissioner work or
Something like, you know,
that.
Chair O'Brien would say like, oh, I need to know what people are working on, right? When she first started.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know what people are working on.
Yeah.
Because she, you know, where she kind of first got started and then she kind of figured out the motions and how things go. And then she started to figure out what people were working on. But this is you know, because I can hear her, like her beef was like, well, I don't know what people are working on. I'm the chair.
That's very.
I should be saying, you're gonna work on this, you're gonna work on this, you're gonna work on this. Which,
But she may have-
Is it in consultation with? the
yeah, something, it
commissioners?
has to be something.
I mean, I think the potential for abuse.
There's a
here
major potential for
is
here.
You want to
Political
work
power.
on this and I'm not gonna let you work on it. I think that's the
How about,
But I think giving the chair the ability to say, I need to have this work done, I'm asking
Sure.
treasurer,
Yeah.
whatever the task is.
Yeah.
I think the chair has the ability to ask a commissioner to do
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
work.
Absolutely.
so.
But if we have other,
Doesn't mean, like,
Individual
the chair's
efforts.
point, doesn't mean we have to say yes.
right.
Yeah.
But if we have other individual
Yeah.
efforts that we're working with a team on, I think there is an obligation or a responsibility for the chair to at least be aware of that work.
So here's the proposal, if I may. Coordinates commission work and project assignments among commissioners in consultation with the commissioners.
I don't think this speaks to the awareness part. And I think that is that's
I
been the
think
rub.
that's the big rub.
So the chair needs to be aware or notified so that there's no overlap in work and projects. And I think that's valid. I think when Chair O'Brien stated, it made sense and we saw the road, you know, in a public conversation. So same course.
So if we, let's move the kind of direct authority to the front of the line. May designate commissioners to assume or to assume project assignments. So let's be clear about the chair's authority to do that. And then maybe build out a separate numerette which talks about she'll engage with commissioners to understand individual
Priority.
commissioner projects or priorities.
I think we have that
Libby
somewhere.
has a point to.
Yeah. So. One of the things that stuck with me when I stepped into this AED role was the communication from the AED's office to the commissioners, right? And I hear all the commissioners supervise the ED. And so if we're saying the chair is coordinating, and I'm going to go back to my comment about, does this give supervisory responsibility to the chair of, you know, the other commissioners? And if this is supposed to be a collective effort, why is it not collaborates commission work and project assignments with commissioners? It just seems like if it's a collective effort, then it should be a collaborative process and not, you know, not an implied silent supervisory role, because you can interpret that as being in a supervisory role.
I feel like that. I like just changing that word among to with. It's taking away that sort of I'm
Right.
guiding to or
Yeah.
I'm directing.
Yeah.
And it still speaks to working with commissioners.
Working together,
Yes.
everybody's working together,
I
which,
like
which is, if you go back to the purpose of this whole
Mhm.
document is for a collective, collaborative working environment, right? And I don't know if, I think when I read that, I can't remember if that word collaborative was in
that. I think
there.
it's at the beginning, but that also speaks to how we operate currently too.
Right.
Because we don't delegate. you know,
Exactly.
work.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, so C would read, proposal is collaborates commission work and project assignments with commissioners. Everybody like that?
Can you read that again?
Sure. Collaborates commission work and project assignments with commissioners.
What do you mean coordinates commission?
I thought Debbie said collaborates.
Yeah, but that was more illustrative, using collaborative because it's in, so you could also write it as, works collaboratively with commissioners on projects and assignments or something like that.
See, right here with,
Or
I see that as the collaborative component. Like to me,
Yeah.
at least when
Oh,
I'm.
yes, exactly. You did say that. Yeah.
So just leave it as
Coordinates
coordinates with.
So coordinates commission work and project assignments with
With
commissioners.
commissioners, yeah.
Okay.
You're right. That does imply that it's a togetherness work.
Okay, so the only change there is among changes to width. Everyone good with that? Okay, let's look at F. And I know that there has been a lot of experience lately around F. So the first proposal is designates a commissioner to act as chair for public meetings in the chair's absence. It just adds public meetings. The chair has designated the secretary to serve as chair if the chair is absent and has not previously designated another commissioner to act as chair for a public meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
Well,
No? Okay.
so my question is, the red was proposed from whom?
Me.
Okay, so my question is, does that mean, does public meeting encompass everything? Is how I read it, designates a commissioner to act as chair for public meeting. When I first read it, I'm almost scared that meant only the public meeting.
It does.
So only not the rest of the agency? Can you explain to me?
That's my interpretation of the statute. So the statute gives the chair the ability to designate, but my interpretation was for our public meetings. And that's how we've utilized it.
I see,
It's always been,
I see.
okay, the chair cannot be present for this public
Got it.
meeting.
Got it.
So in my absence at this meeting, the next meeting, I'm designating so on and so forth. And I think that's accounted for. What's not accounted for is where we see ourselves now, where there is not a chair in place who can make that designation, but the designation was only for public meetings.
Let me ask a super silly practical question. So Kim just had an emergency right now, for example. We are in a public meeting, but let's say the chair, we're not in a public, I don't know, we're in a regular day, a Monday through Friday, not public meeting, and the chair has an emergency to go to. So as the chair, if let's say that chair is out for 2 days because they're sick and family emergency, whatever, and they know that they can't be the chair for, I don't know, those 2-3 days. Does the chair does have the ability to say, hey, I'm out for 2 days? No, you see what I'm saying?
I
Like,
don't think,
okay,
so I'm saying no. I think
Okay.
that goes beyond,
okay,
and that's when,
statute,
the commission has to
okay.
make a decision. But also in that sort of scenario, couldn't the chair just call us?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So the only time you would actually need the chair.
It's for a
to be
public
present
meeting.
is for a
Okay,
public
okay,
meeting.
okay. So that answers my question on that.
So everyone's okay with the first proposed changes, which is to clarify that that's for a public meeting. And then the second change is,
Did,
yeah,
instead of public, could you say posted meetings? Because obviously executive session is not a public meeting. But we post it. We post.
but
our
you need a
monthly
chair,
meetings.
like for this meeting, do you?
3 of us. I mean, yeah,
Just making sure we're not excluding an executive session.
But to go into executive session, you need a public meeting.
yeah, it's eventually it's disclosed, right? So that's why I think it might be a public meeting to begin with, because you have to schedule it as a public meeting.
Post the public one, post the executive session.
public meetings.
It's a public meeting.
That's why we have the minutes. That's why the record is a public record technically.
It eventually
Okay.
becomes discoverable.
I'll tell you, my fear of saying posted is,
There are
it's
other
like a broad
meetings,
meaning.
Mhm.
there
to
are other
that.
meetings that are posted, right?
All
No,
public.
only public.
Yeah, because CAB meetings are not, the chair doesn't have to run those. If we haven't had this, but if we had a community listening session, you know, and the chair,
That's also accounted for too. It's you only need 3 commissioners present, and then amongst the 3, you can just like vote
Yeah.
who the
Yeah.
person's be.
Yeah.
Is he okay with public meetings?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I know executive session essentially is public before it becomes public, but we're operating right now where it's essentially not a public.
We open as a public. hearing.
No, we operate as a-
Executive session seems to be a component of a public meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now the harder proposal. If a chair is removed or suspended by the.
I'm sorry, Susan, I highlighted the other sentence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason I highlighted was just I don't know why that's in there. So the chair has designated the secretary to serve as chair if the chair is absent and has not previously designated another commissioner to act as a chair for a public meeting. So at this point, like, there's been a lot of stuff in terms of this portion of it, so I just don't know why it's in there.
We did that a long time ago, actually, when Bruce was the secretary. And it was just to have a fallback in case the chair hadn't appointed, like the chair has an emergency and there's a public meeting. How do you figure out who the chair is for that public meeting? So it was just to set a default. And it seemed to make sense that since the secretary has responsibilities for the minutes of the meeting, I think that was the rationale.
Yeah, I just don't know, and Bruce, since you put it in here, I don't know if after all these months of what we've learned and sort of the processing that we've been going through with having to vote on a new chair all the time, I mean, maybe there's another way to say, because now there's another example. We've all voted, or like, if a chair is removed and suspended by the appointing authorities, the remaining commissioners will elect an acting chair, so that's the scenario now. So it's like 2 scenarios in here.
Yeah, because one is just the immediate emergency. So to have a default, so that you don't have to start voting for someone for that immediate meeting. And the second is what I would call the more complicated case where the chair's seat is vacant long-term.
And I didn't offer this language.
Right, this came, it just was that Bruce was the secretary when we initiated this.
So think about it as the highlighted section speaks to when we have an active chair. It's a scenario where there's a chair here, there's no suspension, no removal. The chair, let's say, has to go, they can't get to, and nobody knows what's going on because they're just off somewhere.
Got it.
The second part of this that's in red speaks to when there's a suspension or termination, a removal.
But isn't the first sentence and the second sentence, aren't those in conflict?
That's what I mean. It's like,
Because the first one is pretty broad.
yes.
So if the first one is that broad, then it says the chair has designated. So
Yeah.
it sounds like that's already established that the chair has designated the secretary.
Or someone. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be the
The
secretary.
statute says that the chair will designate
A person. Yeah.
a person. And so we went further than the statute to say if the chair hasn't designated someone, then it'll be the secretary.
So
well,
instead
so
instead of leaving
that's
it,
not how it reads to me, though.
But
Yeah.
it also speaks to the chair having the ability to designate.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll take a step back and I'll
Okay.
kind of listen a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bruce.
no, and this was consistent in gaming. The chair knew, I'm traveling next month, I'm not gonna be around.
Sure. Like the governor.
And our chair at the time rotated around, but he said, Commissioner Camargo will chair that public meeting in my absence. And I'm okay with that, designates the commissioner act as chair for public meetings. I'm just wondering if instead of this second sentence line being there, be folded into the secretary's responsibilities and just say, in the chair's absence, or the secretary shall serve as chair at a public meeting in the chair's absence, and unless a chair has not been designated. Does it make sense to move that to the secretary?
Like a whole other thing.
Version.
I mean, I disagree. It's like, I hear what you're saying, but we're at the CCC, so to me, it's all different than any other commission. And I think that at the end of the day, what we've experienced right now amongst ourselves to have to pick an acting chair has been painful, but I think it's allowed us to have the conversation in public and decide who becomes the chair, who's the who's the best option for the moment, right? So I wouldn't want to lock somebody in. If the chair is here and has to go somewhere for whatever emergency reasons and says, hey, Debbie, you're the chair. I understand that scenario. If the chair gets hit by a bus, God forbid, or gets suspended, or a major emergency happens that we haven't even heard from the chair, right? Then we elect to appoint one of us commissioners as chair.
Can I make a suggestion here? Because I think you're right, that they don't really belong together.
Yeah,
What if we take that last sentence, a proposal about an acting chair, and make it the last item under chair? Because it's not really a chair's responsibilities. It's when there's a vacancy in the chair. The proposal is, so does that word vacancy fit even when it's a suspension?
No.
No,
it's technically
okay.
not big.
yeah.
All right.
It's such a
technically not
weird-
vacant. Okay.
I also like, Debbie, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So, again, I'm gonna go back to the second, chair has designated sound like an.
That's what I was gonna say.
Active statement.
Yeah.
It's, that it's all, the chair has
Yeah.
already designated,
Mhm.
the secretary to serve. So it's a moot point for anything else.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if it should say something like the chair has the authority to designate a member of the commission, commissioners to, in their absence, to serve as the chair in their absence.
I like that and I,
Because if you look, if you think about this is saying the secretary. The secretary's role is temporary.
Mhm.
And if the secretary, and I know somebody else will move into the role, and I don't know, I think I read somewhere that
Every year.
those roles are every year, so is it January?
Mhm. January.
That the benches or the seats will switch.
Mhm.
So I'm just thinking if, a broader statement about the chair's authority to designate, because statutorily, the chair has the authority to designate someone as the chair.
Property.
Other commissioners in a role already,
I read this incorporating that, and that is
Yeah.
from statute. So that second component as, has not previously designated another commissioner to act as chair.
has the authority to designate a commissioner
But I,
to serve as a
what
chair.
I'm saying is, that's what it's saying.
The first sentence says the commissioner chair designates a chair to act as chair for public meetings in the chair's absence.
So we don't, so that's
So
why
we don't
we
need
don't need
that
that.
then.
The second.
We don't
So
need
we
the
don't
second
need the
sentence.
second
but we
What
do-
happens if the chair gets hit by a bus and there's a public meeting that day? How do you determine who the chair is? The
Well,
chair has the
We vote
authority.
amongst ourselves.
But it says you vote for other, it says you vote, it says if the chair is removed or suspended by the appointing authority, the remaining commissioners will elect it acting
We can
chair.
add more.
So what's the
There are
difference?
two different things. There's two different things. One is the chair, God forbid, gets hit by a bus and is not available, but the person's gonna come back in a month. So it's the immediate one. The second sentence is when the chair is gonna be gone long-term for reasons that take away that person's authority to designate a chair.
Okay, so you're talking about short-term and long-term. So short-term, the chair can designate anyone. to be in the seat, in the chair seat. But if the chair is gone for 6 months, say on disability leave, then the chair is going to say, I'm designating this particular commissioner to sit in that seat. I don't really see a difference between short-term and long-term. When you designate someone into the chair's role, to me, it doesn't matter if it's short, if it's 6 weeks or it's 6 months, there's an absence, right? So,
So does that mean then one of the chair's responsibilities when they become chair is to say, if I don't appoint anybody else, this is who I'm deciding as.
decide who is going to be the acting chair. I mean, it's in there for other
Or the,
situations.
or the chair, as is here, designates a commissioner to act as a public, as chair for public meeting. It's almost like a will.
I think it would be, if you don't want it to be the secretary, I think it should say the chair designates a default
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah,
If the chair is no longer.
and that could be
Because,
anyone.
that's what I think I'm hearing is that the
Yeah.
problem is why the secretary. But I think for the emergency, like the new chair, a chair comes in and someone says to the chair, who's your default chair if you can't be at a meeting?
Mhm.
And so that's no.
And it may be the secretary, or maybe
Then it could
Could
be
be
anybody. Yeah. So is that the preference?
Yeah.
The chair designates a default.
Yes,
The chair designates a default chair.
And
to
that would be
serve.
at the chair's discretion.
Yeah.
At that point, the chair can say, okay, I want you, the secretary, I want you, the treasurer, I want you, a commissioner to serve. To me, it just seems like this is, the way this is written, the chair has designated, it's like, okay, the current chair is telling you that, the secretary is going to be the chair in my absence.
So the second sentence of F would read, the chair designates a default chair to serve as chair if the chair is absent and has not previously designated another commissioner to act as chair.
Yeah, and
That
I
sounds
wonder,
This is
Or-
sounding way too confusing.
or if you, I think the statute should be cited there.
What is it for the first?
For the
sentence?
first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bruce, you don't like that? So it's basically taking out has designated the secretary and replacing it with designates a default chair. Let's sit on that and get to the heart, what I think is the harder one, which is when a chair is removed or suspended. Or otherwise,
Unavailable. Yeah, I said that, Commissioner Camargo, you said something that made my mind start thinking, because I'll like let you kind of respond, so I'm understanding that correctly. So even if it is, in the scenario, we do have a chair who is active, who can make a designation, but is unable to because of whatever emergency. I think I heard you say that then the commissioners should then.
yes,
decide.
it's like the worst case scenario. We talked about this a lot. And I know that we are all responsible people. I know my dad's dying, but I was like, oh my God, I gotta tell people that I gotta go, I gotta run. I'm trying to get on a plane, right? Like, you think about those moments in time where it's like, shit just happened.
Right.
And Kim had to run right now, right? She had the time to tell us, hey, I can't be here, but like, stuff happens.
Right.
And when stuff happens, we're in these predicaments. So it's like, I'm thinking the worst case scenario, your phone went dead, I didn't make it to a meeting. We've all been in those situations where I'm running late, I get into a car accident, my phone's dead, I don't have a plug,
Right.
and now there's no chair at this meeting right now. I don't know, this is worst case scenario, but because of everything that's happened at this commission, I think with this stuff, we gotta think all those little pieces so that we are covered.
So instead of having the secretary or default, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're saying to have, as a collective, us decide on who
Kind
should.
of backup.
It's the same thing that it says here, if a chair is removed or suspended, so it's like if a chair is removed, suspended, or unavailable, by appointing, or whatever, maybe it's something else, but this is an appointing authority situation. But I would just say, like, worst case scenario, the chair, if you don't show up to your job today
Right.
as the chair and it is a public meeting,
Right, right.
you've either as a chair sent an email to all the commissioners and say, hey, in case of emergency,
Yeah.
that I don't show up, I designate to be the chair.
I don't know if I'm in agreement for that change. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I understand, we've had, what is it, like 3 meetings now where we have had lengthy conversations, but it was necessary because of the situation we found ourselves.
Yeah.
The appointing authority has intervened, and we didn't have an active chair. I think that makes sense, and even though it
Yeah.
was a long conversation and
Yeah.
uncomfortable at times, there was a lot at stake then. For an ordinary public meeting and there's an active chair, I'll speak for myself. Like, let's say, I don't, you know what, I won't say anything for myself because I don't want to put anything in the atmosphere.
Your phone
But
dies and
whatever
you're an hour
reason.
late.
Yeah, there you go.
Phone dies
My
and you're
phone
an hour late.
dies, I'm on the way here, nobody can reach me.
What do we do?
I am afraid of if there is not some language for a default,
Or
that
yeah.
it's an hour-long conversation just to get into a public meeting that is just an
So then
ordinary
how-
course of business.
I agree with all that. So then, so what do we do in that scenario?
So if there's a default or the secretary, that's who it goes.
Got
It's like, okay, we cannot reach her. This is already accounted
Got
for.
it.
Boom.
But that's
And that-
another scenario.
But that's what this speaks to already. That's what the yellow is speaking towards. The yellow is in cases where the chair active but not available.
I guess what I don't agree is sort of has not previously designated another commissioner.
No, but we're changing that.
Oh.
We're saying that the chair designates a default chair.
Okay. Default. I'm
And
okay with that.
that's the emergency.
I'm okay with
And
it.
I'm saying just to avoid, because we see how long that conversation.
I'm okay with default.
Okay.
I'm okay with default.
I think I know.
Yeah.
Let's go to the.
Let's
That's specific.
Let's just go
Let's
to the.
jump to the.
Yeah.
But
the worst.
Commissioner Stebbins, I know we can go back to it, but your question is about default versus secretary, but it's not about having a person. You're still.
Be you.
Come everybody.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm thinking, first of all, that the language in yellow for me is clunky and everything else. Walk back through, again, I'm chair. I know I'm going to be on vacation next month. There's a meeting. I asked Commissioner Camargo to serve as chair. The other scenario is running late, family emergency, can't make the meeting, haven't had the time to communicate with somebody, but we got to kick the meeting off. We got to start getting down to business. I'm just suggesting it's instead of the default, one, either make it more seamless with secretary can open the meeting, or do you combine the start of that sentence with this default language, like I'm chair. If I'm ever not here, X, Y, Z is doing it. So just roll that all up in one instead of having this kind of dual approach to it.
So,
Yes.
I could imagine that a chair, let's say the meeting is on a particular issue and says, Bruce, I want you to chair this meeting because you're very familiar with the substance of this. But generally, if I'm not here and I haven't called on anybody, I want Commissioner Concepcion. So do you just want those two concepts in the same sentence? Or is it that you don't want two different designations, or is it just the clunkiness of the
I
sentence?
kind of agree with that. Let me explain why. So in thinking of my military experience, everything is ranked, right? And when the base commander is gone, then the highest ranking general takes that role. When the highest ranking, just like the acting roles, when the highest ranking general is also gone, then it may be a brigadier general as opposed to a major general that takes on that role. So would it be feasible to rank commissioners in terms of their tenure And if you have a chair who is gone and then you rank by tenure, that what Commissioner Stebbins is talking about is that the next highest tenured commissioner would step in, would be the default. And then the second default would be the next one, and the third default would be the next one. So maybe that's something that, you know, if you
Tenure is a
rank
little
by,
tough because we're all, just rotated out at the same time,
Yeah.
but I hear what you're saying.
but do you come in, I mean, there's got to be a month or two or something in there that differentiates your time in service, right? I don't know, just a thought,
Yeah.
just a
There-
thought.
And I know Commissioner Stebbins, I know where you're at, because I think you have experience in, and you've said this in public meetings, there's a president, and other commissions do it like this. So I know kind of where your thought is, but I also know the practicality of what you're talking about in terms of opening a meeting, right? But, you know, I think however we get to this, the scenario that the chair goes on vacation and says, hey, Commissioner, I'm going on vacation, you're gonna be the commissioner moving forward for the next 2 weeks, fine. The situation of suspension, I think we've figured it out in terms of electing somebody. I think the one that we're missing is sort of the unavailable chair for whatever reason. Not to have to get into a voting situation for an available chair that could be an emergency or something like that. Therefore, the ranking person, I mean, the two officers of the commission are that have not, I guess, other roles are the treasurer and the secretary. So those are the two other officers of the commission, the secretary and the treasurer, you know? So those are the only ranking kind of
Oh, you can rank like that as well.
whatever, right? Like that. But I hear what you're saying, Commissioner, and I'm also trying to put, and maybe I'm a worrywart, but I'm trying to put all case scenarios into this chair situation because
What's your preference in the case of an emergency?
in a case of emergency, I think that for it to be cleaner, it has to be, I think, if we did tenure, it's like, example, Bruce and I came on the same day.
So that
So
doesn't.
that doesn't, you know, that kind of singles us out, right? So it probably does have to be either the secretary or the treasurer. And or if the secretary is not here, then it's a treasurer. If the treasurer is not here, then it's a secretary, right? So it could be that, because that would be the only, that's the scenario of unavailable. That would be the only scenario where that will come into play.
That's how we got here.
So you want to go back to the secretary?
So
And that was the question I was gonna ask, is why were we deviating from the secretary? I think I got lost a little bit in the sauce when you started
I
saying.
think because when I read it overnight or before, how I read it was the chair has designated the secretary to serve. Or to me, it reads as this is what it is. The chair has designated the secretary to serve as a chair if the chair is absent and has not previously designated another commissioner. I was reading that has not previously designated another commissioner as like a comment. You know, that's what made me kind of like, wait, why is that in there? Like, that's implying, you know, that's just implying.
I think what we would do, it could just say the secretary serves as the chair. If the chair is absent and has not previously designated. However, I think what we were trying to do is be in line with the statute, which gives the chair the authority to designate.
Mhm.
And
that's fine.
And I think there's a context for that, and Susan, you gave a great example. And again, it's for the known planned absence.
Yeah. Unknown.
I'm chair, I'm gonna be away. To the example you raised, or hypothetical,
Mhm.
you know, we're talking about chapter 180 regulations. I'm asking my colleague to chair that meeting.
Yeah.
The other scenario is I'm running late or family emergency,
Yeah.
hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Just, and again, I think baking some of this into the secretary languages, the secretary opens the meeting,
Yeah.
you know, whatever conducts business. And then we have the third scenario, which is the most drastic,
Yeah.
which is
The chair and the secretary.
the chair and secretary both get hit by a bus or in
Yeah.
the same car, but the chair is removed or suspended,
So it
which
sounds,
is a completely different
so
scenario.
let me just ask, so it sounds, Bruce, like you're suggesting no change to the existing language. Leave it as it is regarding the secretary. And maybe add something into the secretary's position, and if we want to add into the treasurer, if the chair and the secretary are not available, the treasurer.
Can we write if so?
I would, if I'm looking at F, first sentence stays. The next sentence, I think you bake it into the secretary's job description. And then I think we need to address the third sentence, which is the person can't appoint anybody or designate anybody and has been suspended, which is not short-term thing.
That's my only comment for the second. I think it can also be reflected in the secretary's portion, but it's important to incorporate it here because the chair is the only authority who can designate. And so if there's not something.
Yeah.
I like laid out saying that the
okay.
chair is designated,
I'm okay
that
with
it's
that.
invalid.
I'm okay with that. I would also just say if, because I think how I'm reading it, the chair has designated the secretary to serve as a chair. If the chair is absent and has not previously designated another commissioner. Like, to me, that's an active sentence.
But it's on purpose intentional. It's intentional because of the statute.
Got it. Now,
We have to say that that is an agreement the chair has in order for it to be
the
valid.
chair has, oh.
The chair
I
has to
see.
designate.
I see. Thank you. Okay. Chair has, so that means, oh, okay.
Because it's in the chair's singular authority.
Got it.
Let's go to the third sentence.
The chair has it, not will, the chair will.
Well, the chair is unable to designate. So you can't say
Oh,
will
and-
as in future.
Yeah.
You just say
I
it
see.
here so that it's an active.
Okay.
Let's go to the third case. The current proposal is if a chair is removed or suspended by the appointing authorities, the remaining commissioners will elect an acting chair. Commissioner Roy said we have to avoid deadlock.
Another sentence. I think that was a question.
That wasn't a sentence. That was just a comment. That
Oh.
wasn't language.
That's a legal question too.
Well, I don't know that you got to deadlock. You
We haven't.
eventually. It
Like Sean
eventually
said,
worked.
Sean said to us one day when Chairman Hoffman left, he said, you gotta pick a new pope. And until the smoke doesn't come out, nobody's coming out of public meeting.
It's really, we've proven that we can do it. I think it gets, it's so awkward, but I still think that it works. But I'm open to hearing sort of, what you guys
I think the question is, what are other options?
or the need for another option.
I mean, you're saying this worked.
I'm saying
I'm
that's,
saying,
agree
is
that
there
it's
any,
an
is there any
option.
other alternative? If people don't like this
Yeah.
proposal, is there any, does someone have an alternative to offer a suggestion? That would be another way of getting to an acting chair.
did Commissioner Roy have any additional notes or an alternative? No.
Her thing was just a deadlock. What if we got into a deadlock?
I guess, Commissioner Camargo and Commissioner Stebbins, do you feel comfortable with the proposal?
I do, just because I think, I've said this before, we can commission ourselves. It's painful. We've been through it already twice. We have to go through it again on December 14th.
3 times.
Yeah.
Or
This is the fourth time, but this is an outlier.
So if the appointing authority suspend the chair, shouldn't the appointing authority also appoint a temporary chair?
And they have in the past. That's how we had acting chair, Sarah Kim. In this scenario, it's a little bit
But
different
appoint
because
some commissioners though.
It could.
They could.
Yeah,
So even, I guess technically speaking, they could now, and
Yeah,
they just
right.
chosen not
Yeah,
to.
I
But this
see.
is also the first time that we've had a suspended chair as opposed to a removed, not, I shouldn't say removed, chair that stepped down or.
Yeah.
So I mean, they still technically,
Right, so maybe what this needs to say,
Build in that language also, first of
Yeah.
all,
if a
Chair.
chair is removed or suspended by the appointing authority, the remaining commissioners will elect an acting chair until until a new chair is appointed by the appointing
I
authority.
don't want to say
until-
new, because it doesn't account for.
Maybe an interim.
No, what you're saying, until the appointing authority determines determines
Otherwise.
the chair.
Determines the chair. That's a good way. to put it.
Okay.
Yes.
just for clarity, we don't need to have the IES on there. There's only.
Because
one
it's always
authority
the,
for the
for the
chair.
chair.
I don't,
For the-
I don't agree. Well, I'm saying that because the way the statute is written, so it depends on your interpretation, that it doesn't have to be, that's a whole sidebar conversation.
Right.
But there could be a scenario in the future when we're no longer here, where the treasurer decides that the commissioner, who's like the finance person and corporate background person, is not the chair. They instead want the social justice or the regulatory person to be the chair. They can still do that.
That still rests with one person, right? Still rests with the treasurer.
Oh.
That's why I mean,
Touche.
it's one authority.
One
not
authority.
Just to erase confusion that it might be multiple.
If the chair is removed or
And
suspended.
that is a good point, right? Yes.
All right. How about if we take a brief break? And when we come back, we're gonna go to the communication section, because that's really raw.
Are we,
That's the chair.
Susan, I just asked you to be final.
Yeah.
Have we reached sort of an agreement on, or?
So my understanding is that F stays as it is. The language about the secretary will be carried into the secretary's roles, is designated as the default chair by I'll get that language done. And then this third sentence is as is, and it says until the appointing authority approves the chair. Okay. So let's take a 5-minute break and then come back and go to communications. Okay,
I see J too.
Yeah, me too.
yeah. Do you want to do J so we're done with this
Yep.
section?
Yes.
All right, let's do J. So, so what I want to ask you to look at is the budget section, which is at page minute, right near the communication section. The budget section is on page 17. And on number 4, there's blue text that reads, the chair, executive director, and director of government affairs will make a strategic determination regarding testimony by another commissioner or staff person. And that was agreed to at the last meeting. And so my understanding is that the red language and the question is, does this language get carried into the treasurer's responsibilities?
Yes, correct.
So it says the treasurer testifies in support of the annual General Appropriations Act with the executive director.
Where's that?
Oh, no, this is the chair. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, this wasn't, just so you all folks, you guys know we had a long conversation around this. I don't, as a sitting treasurer, I don't believe that the treasurer's position has to be the one to testify with the executive director and the chair. My recommendation was leave it open to any other commissioner or staff member, depending on, you know, the appropriation, the conversation, the subject matter piece of it. So that was my recommendation.
That was my mistake. It reads, the chair testifies in support of the annual General Appropriations Act with the executive director and may designate additional participants in consultation with the executive director.
And on number 4, Debbie,
And so, but your question here, I think, is should it say, and may designate additional participants in consultation with the executive director and
government
the
affairs.
director of government affairs?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah, that's basically, yeah, because you had the language in number 4, it's perfect. The
Okay.
chair, executive director, and director of government affairs will make a strategic determination regarding testimony by another commissioner or staff person.
Okay.
And it's just an option.
So is that okay? It just really reflects the language that was agreed in the budget section. It just adds in consultation with the executive director and the changes and the director of government affairs.
And this is an example, Debbie, where the chairperson could say, hey, executive director, it's just you and I testifying on this. That's it.
You okay with that?
Or the option to allow for the chair and the ED to have the conversation and say, hey, we're going for a big public awareness, supplement. Maybe you bring someone that can talk to that, you know what I mean? It's the option too versus the strict sort of like, oh, no one else can go to this and no one else can testify. It gives the ED and the chair space to collaborate to decide who goes there.
Commissioner Camargo, you are proposing a third party here, so having the director of government affairs be a part of that determination?
Yeah, I figured, we can choose, but, because it's budget, because it's, government affairs, state house, politics, policy, I figured they can speak to the director of government affairs.
I just want to add that was the decision at the last meeting in April.
Yeah.
Was that,
That made sense for that budget, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
yeah, this is for the budget and this is
For the
for
budget.
the annual general appropriations.
I understand. The one is about planning, and that's under the budget section.
Mhm.
The one under the testifying, this is testifying at the annual general appropriations act.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
so it's around testimony and determining who. But if you're repeating the language that's in the budget here, we're saying that the ED, the chair, and now the director of government affairs are determining who should testify.
That is what it's, oh, I see.
I see what you're saying, right?
And I don't think that's I think it should remain.
The ED and the chair.
The ED and the chair,
Okay.
because of.
I'm okay with that.
Organization.
I'm okay with that. I really, my thing was more, there should be space for a third person and the ED and the chair can decide
I
who they consult with, you know what I mean?
I agree with that, and I think it's accounted for here.
Yeah.
But the idea of adding sort of
Got
a
it.
third determining party,
Got it. With the chair and the ED.
I don't think.
I got it. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
And
All right.
hopefully the ED has a good temperature, Beacon Hill.
It-
without-
Fine.
So, yeah,
That's why I thought in the beginning, that's why I think, talked about it, right? So.
and can I just make a comment about that? Not necessarily identifying a third person, but the ED and the chair agreeing, if they need a subject matter expert, because a lot of times if someone knows a lot about social equity or, some other,
Medical.
medical, that they may ask questions that the ED and the chair may not be able to answer because we don't have that hands-on experience. And so we may say, you know what, I want the director of medical
Right.
to come with us in case we get questions that we're not able to answer. So I think that's where the flexibility lies.
I agree.
Okay, 5-minute break and then we're gonna start communications. All right, so everyone gets settled with their lunch and you're gonna, maybe while you're starting, you haven't recently read through press, media and external engagement. And again, as soon as you're ready, we'll start.
What page that's that?
Starts on page 15. It's page 15 and 16.
Sorry.
Okay, so the blue is changes from the last meeting, and the red are proposed changes that I heard from my conversations with all of you. And in two instances, there are two proposed options. So where it says a second proposed option, that refers to the one right above it.
And then I'm sorry, what page is it on the bigger packet?
It's page 15.
I'm trying to get a bite before I go. Amazing.
It's my favorite, like sweet.
Chicken salad.
It's like, strawberry salad, they call it. It has mandarins, blueberries, strawberries.
Okay, so first bullet, that's been there for a while. Any questions or comments on that first bullet? No. Okay, the second bullet is added from the last meeting, but it's also added at the commissioner's roles and responsibilities. So it's there twice. And I want to look at that I want to look at 2, 3, and 4 together because 3 is simply moved up from 8. So what is now 3, you can see if you turn the page, it should have showed up as green, but it didn't. It's simply it's moved up. And then the number 4 has two proposed options. One is the commissioners respect that the chair is the de facto spokesperson rather than primary, same with the executive director. And the second one is the commissioners are the primary spokespeople on behalf of commission approved policy. So let's look at those all together and see because you don't need all of them. And I think the core of this is the chair as the primary spokesperson versus other issues. Versus what's the role of the commissioners who are not chairs. And Bruce, maybe you can say something because I think it was your suggestion to move number 8 into number 3, and then that would then soften what's now number 4.
And then, Susan, just so I'm kind of a little confused a little bit. The document that I was looking at was what you sent, that was 3/28/2023.
No, I sent you 425. I sent you a document that was 425, and the one that you have in front of you is the one I sent last night, which is 1129. It should be in your package.
Yeah, but you see, I was making my edits off of 3/28/23. Well, the numbers, my quotes.
Right, but I figured out which numbers you were referring to.
Okay.
I think, think my main reason for moving it up was just and it'd be stated in the document someplace, but it was kind of, I always feel you put something as number 2 or 3, it's a little more priority, maybe it has a little more weight, a little more importance. Hopefully, again, reassure commissioners that they do have a role to play, especially on item. Love to find a new term other than item, but I think that was
Sorry to interrupt. Susan, I'm so off right now.
Okay.
I apologize. In your email, just because I want to make sure I'm looking,
Can I give you the?
I have it,
Okay.
but even the email you sent, materials for final governance project, the charter for media engagement was the 328.
No, did I send you? I thought
Yeah.
but
Maybe
it was,
Okay,
okay, maybe I messed up.
yeah, because for me, like my comments, I went through every single line, but they're off of the 328 version. So the 425 version, or that's kind of like why I think I might have asked you on email, but you see the email you sent yesterday at 6:40?
You would ask me for most recent word.
I mean, I'll bring it up and kind of do the compare and contrast on my own, but my comments were off of the 328 version. Again, okay.
No, I sent you the 425 version.
Oh, I have the 328 on in my email.
Okay, the one that I sent you yesterday at 10:02 is 425.
Okay, the one I have here is Wednesday at 6:40. Dear Commissioner Camargo, for tomorrow's final mediation session.
That one is 1128. The one that you got is a PDF. That's 1129.
Let me open it. No, 28. I don't know, this is so weird. Okay, but just so you know, because my head is.
Okay.
This is the,
No, this is, oh.
so you sent me,
No, this is different. You see what that is just, that's the comments that the communications department gave us.
okay,
But that was a separate document compared to the charter.
oh,
That was just their comments.
okay, so I went through that one.
Okay.
So I have to make sure that it reflects, which is fine, I just have to do a
I
bit.
see. So you weren't looking in the big document, you were
No.
looking just at that.
Yeah, I thought that was what we were reviewing was,
Okay, but you know
Either
what?
way.
I think it's same, except that
we never got here anyways, so it's okay, it's okay.
I think it's pretty much was the same version that we had before. I made the changes based on people's comments, so it should be okay, because we never got to it.
Yeah, we've never gone to it anyways.
All right. So I think the big question here is what's the role of the chair relative to being a spokesperson, and what's the role of the commissioners relative to being a spokesperson?
So give me a second, I'm gonna look at the notes that I sent you.
Okay. I put them all in at the bullet that they made sense. So if you look at the document on page 15, it should reflect all of your points.
Okay.
There weren't any things where I said, what is this? This doesn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, so number one for me, I'm like, it's fine if we edit number two, the commissioners to be the commissioners serve as official agency spokesperson. Primary spokesperson, the commissioners are the primary spokesperson on behalf of the commission approved policy. Okay, mine is a little,
Well, you see where it says a second proposed option under what's now number 4?
oh, I see.
That's your
Okay,
proposal.
I see how you did it. Okay,
Okay, because yours came in later, so.
got it. I see.
Similarly, under 7.
Got it. I'm gonna look at this for a few minutes, okay? Just because my head was.
Right, a lot of
Yeah.
documents.
Okay. Four is probably the biggest conversation.
think reading this, like, I think 2 and 3 could be combined into a singular.
Okay.
I would just begin it by saying that all commissioners serve with federal agency spokespersons. I would even say like who may speak on behalf of the commission on items that have been fully vetted and approved by the affirmative vote of 3 commissioners.
Okay, does that work for everyone? So number 2 disappears and number 3 is modified as follows. All commissioners serve as official agency spokespersons, comma, who may speak on behalf of, and the rest of it stays the same.
Yeah.
That work for everyone? Okay. All right. And so what do we want to do with what's currently 4? And there are 2 options.
For that. So the commissioners respect that. I guess I'll ask, I want to get an understanding of that preface. I feel it reads a little bit strange.
Right, Commissioner Stebbins, can you speak to that?
Is that my change? Okay.
If it's a good idea, it is. If it's not,
I know, but I think I gave some of this feedback to Susan a while ago, and I'm trying to
I think,
call.
I remember what you told me. I think your sense was that if you put what's now number 2 up top, it would be clear that all the commissioners were spokespersons, and then you could give a de facto you could respect that the chair is the de facto spokesperson. So it kind of gives the chair, the position of the chair, a little bit of visibility. But by putting the second one up front,
Right.
it was clear that the commissioners also speak on
And-
issues.
And thank you. I think the other thing I was thinking through is we need an immediate response, or there's a press engagement that we want an answer from. And I think it recognizes that sometimes the chair is the best person to maybe deliver that message. Again, that's more to a timeliness factor. I look at our combined now 2 and 3 being a little bit longer term, a little bit more, hey, we took a vote, now all of us can go out and speak to it. It's maybe a more thoughtful communications process. But commissioners thinking, okay, if we need to have some voice from the commission about some incident that just happened, we respect that the chair can kind of work with communications to be the voice for that message.
That makes sense. And I understood that part of it. I guess I was wondering, is why not say the chair is the primary de facto as opposed to, is the beginning language, the commissions respect that? I guess it's just that
Or
term.
knowledge.
But I guess I'm wondering why, like, I think I'm missing sort of how the role that plays. What are we signaling? What does that do by having that language instead of, as opposed to just saying with the chair?
I think I think it was speaking more to, again, the level of trust with the chair is going to make the right decision, again, in what is more of an immediate time frame. And that we acknowledge that the chair can be that de facto spokesperson on behalf of the commission of policy. The executive director is de facto spokesman, I would say, on commission administrative matters, but maybe taking out respect and just put acknowledge.
I mean, it makes it sound like we don't respect
Yeah.
the process when you read it like that. And I think it could just be that if we're gonna do anything, it just could be direct.
Shouldn't the chair have the decision-making authority to determine what engagement or, that he or she or they might want to speak to? As opposed to if there are 3 votes, anybody can go out and speak. What if the chair says, I think I should be the one to do that. And the chair have that flexibility to say, I want to be the one to go out and speak on this topic. As opposed to everybody feeling as if now they can go out and speak.
I think that was the complication, that all of the commissioners see themselves as appointed by authorities
body.
and all have authority to speak, and it got very messy in terms of how the communications department would handle requests. Would they have to run everything through the chair before giving it to someone? So if there was if there was, for example, a request for comments on something that one of the other commissioners were more obvious subject matter expert, would that have to go to the chair before that's, if you look at the page with the blue bubbles on it, that was the communications department asking questions about how they would implement some of the text that we had and their concerns about that.
So are we saying then that we leave that discretion to the communication department?
That was also not, that's why you're hitting all the right spots. No, this is why this section has been the most challenging.
Sure it is.
And wait till you see some of the coming text. You'll see how.
We got a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
No, I looked at this section here, point Debbie, it's not speaking about, we went through a public meeting, we all took a vote on a policy position. We can then all go out and speak to it on behalf of the commission and not just that crazy language we used to have to go through of this one commissioner, I believe, X, Y, Z. I was thinking of this de facto spokesperson being, what's that crisis situation where a quote is needed from the commission, what might be needed from the executive director. And this was to give a little guidance to communications, like, okay, we've had, we can, use Lorna's tragedy of, we've just heard about this, what's your response? We want to hear from the chair. And I think there's some acknowledgement from the other commissioners that it's appropriate for the chair to be the voice in that situation. So maybe we need to build some language in around immediacy versus where a thoughtful vote has taken place and we're all out.
So unexpected versus expected.
Yeah,
I think de facto accounts for that. I understand what this statement means. I also think. Wow, I'm so many things in this commission. Like, I've been going through so many things, but I'm thinking about recently, because a lot of the communications that I've done in this role, around sort of where we see ourselves, what's, you know, because you read the media, but it's been in response to that. So it's not.
No
really-
one else has done it, I haven't wanted to do any of those. Just so it's like, de facto, that's the chair.
Yeah, you gotta take the. Yeah. Exactly. Gotta take the
it's also you, to that point, right? You've been asked these questions a lot more than I have. I'm sure a lot more than Commissioner Camargo has. And we kind of respect your ability to make that
Right.
opinion heard or that comment heard. Now, that doesn't all mean that in our next public meeting, we couldn't take you to task for saying, boy, that was a really, we would say stupid comment, but we're saying, you know, let's think about the direct, you know, it's,
But that's the situation right there.
that is the situation right there, but it's more, you know, we respect that one voice might be called upon in a very tight deadline or a very crisis situation, and to give our team some idea of, okay, we first go to the chair, that type of comment.
Now that I'm reading that, I don't think it accounts for that.
Mhm.
Because this says for a commission approved policy, and that's a vote, but it doesn't account for scenarios like where we find ourselves right now.
I think what Debbie said, kind of like, if that's the de facto,
You know,
then that's almost a different scenario, which is why we got into so many beefs about it in the past. Because you can have a chair that completely goes and says something incorrect that has nothing to do with the commission, or incorrect information, or nothing that any other four commissioners believe in or can agree to. And I think that's the problem here.
Yeah, also there's a contradiction, right? Because it says, if the way we've just changed 3, which is now 2, it says that all the commissioners speak on commission approved policy. And then it says that the chair is the de facto spokesperson on behalf of commission approved policy. So it sounds like we're moving towards the commissioners acknowledge that the chair is the de facto spokesperson on, and we have to figure out on what.
go ahead.
No, I agree with taking out approved policy, so it doesn't kind of conflict anymore.
There's a timeliness element here.
Yeah.
That
But also the commissioners respect the, like, I agree.
Acknowledge, I think the preference is the commissioners acknowledge that the chair is the de facto spokesperson. And then we need another phrase, on or for.
I would say for like, I'm just saying things out loud, but like, I think Bruce has a good point, right? Like the Lorna situation. I mean, Commissioner Chair Concepcion has had to do, recent interviews on, the transition and everything that's happening here, right? Those are like a lot of emergency matters right now, but it's like, maybe it's hot topics or emergency or something like that, like real, what do you say, like real time situations, limited time, something that's the urgency that the chair's role in that position as the chair of the commission is like, we're all on vacation, so this emergency falls on the chair to be the spokesperson, like, I think that's
I guess I agree. I think we're in agreement. It's just how do we. Yes, how do you
Or
carry it?
immediate matters,
Timely or
Immediate.
immediate matters.
timely matters. Or,
I like timely. The only thing is,
do you have a thought, Debbie?
Well, hold on, let me just finish what I'm saying now too, because.
Okay, they can call 911 if they got.
No, what I'm saying is,
Margot,
Sorry, go ahead.
because timely doesn't capture the current situation. You know, and maybe it does, because this has been an extended period of time now,
Mhm.
but it's where we find ourselves. I guess I'm still having a hard time. I don't know if timely.
immediate and time.
Is it urgent, or?
Like, put yourself in the ED position with the situation right now that's happening. You know, like in collaboration with the ED and the chair, but it has to be a
I
time.
don't always want to say like exigent circumstances, but that's me.
But there's also some questions that get directed at the chair just based on, they look to that person as a leader. And it's like, what do you think of this? Again, other board commissioners may not get that question, may not be as timely or as urgent. But I think, and I think immediately, initially, that's what I was going for. It's like, we need somebody to respond. Communications can, you know, without ruffling a lot of feathers, we need to go to the chair for some type of immediate or appropriate response. But I think there's also this longer context of questions you might get of what's the future of the commission?
Right.
You're
Yeah.
leader of this and everything else. And therefore,
Yep.
we respect you or acknowledge that you have the right to be a spokesperson, and we haven't taken a vote on anything or expressed an opinion.
Yeah.
Commissioners acknowledge that the chair, as the leader of the commission, is the de facto spokesperson on urgent and something else.
Is that language like the leader of the commission?
There is a leader, like that's why the press would go to the chair for like, what's the future of the organization. Talk a little bit about the what before, because we're having a hard time with the words. With the, so what are some scenarios that you would expect the chair to be the de facto spokesperson?
The example Commissioner Sevens mentioned about the death of a worker or, I want, so there are some things that kind of fall on all of us, but I will anticipate questions around, you know, BPH and their recommendations that they've given to us. Like, there are things that are not policy, like, you know, policy decisions that we vote on, but still there are questions that tend to be directed towards the chair.
I mean, perfect example right now is what we're dealing with, our suspended chair and the immediate emergency that happened when she got suspended in the public meeting. And after we had a meeting or voted a chair in and all that, like all those questions were targeted at the acting chair. And those were real time that no one else is gonna get in the hot seat or answer. And I know that some questions were asked, even like, are we in a crisis? And I think when we talked about, were we in a crisis, we had a sitting chair. So all those things right now are real.
So this isn't exactly right, but it's something like urgent and general commission matters.
I like
Urgent general commission matters.
For all commission matters. Because it's not on a particular policy. It sounds like what you're describing is
urgent.
the health of the commission, the
Right.
future of the commission, the
That's giving the chair a chance to kind of set that tone a little bit.
Right.
Urgent and immediate, is that the same thing?
urgent or immediate, but the other is and general commission matters or overall commission matters.
Urgent or timely. Urgent and timely.
Mhm.
Timely, for me, covers that period of what we're looking at, right? It's been several months. It's timely to write now, but it's not a death of an employee, a death of a industry employee that we need to have a reaction to immediately.
It's an unusual situation, right? Because that was like
There's always a
way like,
situation, though.
like months later, right? And, yeah, oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll address that someplace.
Commissioner Concepcion, does that sound right for you for urgent and timely? I thought you said you didn't like timely so much.
If we say urgent and time, so, okay, I have a couple of things going through my head right now, because I'm taking myself out of this. When you say timely, it might encompass, might go beyond what we're trying to do. So it might fall into the policy considerations or conversations that are currently happening with the commission. And this is just what I, as an individual commissioner, believe. You know, I still am an individual when I talk about policy considerations. And if it's not been agreed to by the majority of the commission, then I cannot say, this is where we are. The commission believes this. So this is just me I just want to make sure we're not doing something that's overly broad, so that it then gives the chair, any chair, the ability to assert something as being the commission, even if we're not in agreement. So I don't know if that, it's a little, it's not really, the urgent part, I agree with. Urgency speaks to what an emergency situation. I get that. Time is a little bit, it's just,
It also has to be in collaboration with the executive director.
why?
Why?
Yes.
Let's just, so that there's the urgent, let's just see the parts, because there's the urgent, but there's another part that you've been expressing and we haven't found the right word.
Yeah, how to categorize that, yeah.
General matters.
Unexpected.
Matter.
Expected.
I think that's the urgent piece. I think the piece that Commissioner Concepcion was describing was what's the future of the commission, or what you gave some other examples.
Are we in chaos and crisis? Are we
Right.
Leaderless? What are?
Lorna.
I brought up the DPH thing.
Executive director.
Yeah, so, yeah, the executive director, yeah.
Everything that's happened the last couple months is
So-
And urgent.
And urgent.
Timely.
Timely.
And crisis.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of other people, I don't know, Bruce, I don't know about you, but I know that a lot of us have not been doing Scrum and even speaking to that stuff, and I think, you know.
the last time I did Scrum, I didn't get that question. I got a question about something related to, micro business or whatever topic is that I was talking about.
Yeah.
But outside of Scrum, even like places that have requested to speak to someone at the commission, it ended up being the acting chair. It almost falls into the chair, but also I think us commissioners also, we've respected the acting chair to be like you going on that TV show.
Yeah, it's sort of like you bear the brunt, that's the wrong way to say it, but it's like, okay,
Shoulder that responsibility.
yeah,
Right.
so, yes,
And that's the expectation from the media.
right,
Yeah. And
right.
the media thinks if I have a quote from a chair, it's better than.
Right.
a quote from,
Exactly.
Stop.
Yeah, versus that.
And do we have to, can we just say de facto spokesperson? Do we have to say on what?
In any situation,
Well, the above one says that the commissioners all serve as official agency spokespersons. And so does the term de facto spokesperson just kind of like the default for?
But I think there's, I like the use of the word acknowledge. So that helps the chair understand that I don't have to go out to my 4 colleagues every time I get a press call. There's an acknowledgement of, we trust you to say the right thing. But going back to your point, Commissioner Chair, we do have language saying that does kind of constrain a chair a little bit, which is if it's not approved policy, then you have the proviso as one commissioner or as chair, I think this, without speaking for the entire agency.
How do you look at it, Debbie, from an executive director point of view? With all your experience?
I'm looking at this from how, I'm like taking a step outside.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the inside from the outside. What would the expectation be? And to me, in any situation, if a media person gets a hold of something, the first person they're gonna go after is the chair,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that's how I would look at it. If it was something internal, then, you know, I mean, there's stuff out there in the media about internal power struggles and, you know, nonsense like that. And if they were to come after someone internally, right now, that would be me. Grant Ellis Smith actually did that. So to me, it's like,
I don't know what he says anymore. I've muted him.
I just don't really care.
Yeah.
You know, media doesn't really bother me, because I'm above all of that.
Yeah.
I pick my battles, so I don't pick media battles because I also have the agency to consider and,
Right.
you know, commissions, all of our employees. But on the outside looking in, I would expect that as an executive director or AED, that if something catastrophic happens, that they would be looking for a statement from the AED. Because that is going to be the person responsible for maintaining order, chaos, you know, chaotic situations and things like that.
I think the other part of this too, you know, Debbie, is like, unfortunately, I would say this, these positions, you know, they're not personality proof. And in this, I know that a little bit of the rub too, and we had conversations with the communications team, a while back, you know, but it's also like, on a practical note for them, it's being very clear as to if the person in the chair seat says, well, I'm the de facto, everything comes to me.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna be the only spokesperson for all this stuff, then that becomes the situation. And I think it depends who, you know, depends who the chair is and how it functions, and, you know, which is why I think here we have the chair, that's something de facto, executive primary, de facto spokesperson, so, and the executive director. So I don't know. So that's kind of the inside situation, is sort of like making sure that, you know, if you do have a chair that just wants to speak and be the only spokesperson and then hold all that power and kind of say stuff that none of us agree on, then that's the underlying problem here. And then, like, I put in here just an opinion, but the commissioners are the primary spokespeople on behalf of the commission of policy. And the executive director is a primary spokesperson on the administrative matters. That doesn't, it's almost a little bit of what's baked into number 3. But I think it still doesn't get to, like, I think the underlining situation of the chairperson being the main spokesperson if you have a personality problem.
So I was gonna say, I had heard the word general in there.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the second part of that could be maybe the de facto spokesperson in general matters. And then that way it leaves that open for anyone to actually take on that, you know, that role. If it's not the chair, then somebody else, you know, would have the opportunity to take on that role.
So here's
So
what,
two parts to it. The urgent and, but then the general part would be the de facto part.
so the commission acknowledges that the chair is the de facto spokesperson for urgent and general matters. And the executive director is the de facto spokesperson for commission administrative matters. That work?
So general's non-approved policy.
Yeah. I think.
But it doesn't mean that commissioners are not also, there's still
Right.
spokespeople.
Right, and
Yeah.
because that's above that one.
Yeah.
It's kind of, so the number 2 says all commissioners serve as official agency spokespersons. And then the one beneath that is the commissioners acknowledge that the chair is the de facto spokesperson for urgent and general matters. Is it for or on? On? On urgent and general matters. And the executive director is the de facto spokesperson on commission administrative matters.
Is there, I like that
It's a bumping,
new wording.
I think.
I'm wondering, I'm looking further down to kind of ease our concerns about the chair talking too much.
Or down.
What if you moved 11 up to follow the new number 4? Just so it seems better connected. No,
For no approved policy. That's.
Yeah.
When,
I would just say when the chair or commissioners are discussing an issue for which there is no approved commission policy or communicating in their individual capacity. I don't know why we'd be speaking in a capacity other than a commissioner.
Well, if you're at an event, it's individual.
Oh, right.
giving
Yeah.
a talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I throw some language out there? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. The chair is the de facto spokesperson. The chair is the de facto spokesperson on behalf of the commission approved policy, including on matters pertaining to urgent or exigent circumstances and long-term strategic planning initiatives.
Right.
Supplementing, the executive director is the primary de facto spokesperson on daily administrative matters.
But did you just make the chair the de facto spokesperson on approved policy?
No. Just, I did, but no. I'm throwing up just information on the just ideas here in terms of language, including on matters, maybe including on matters pertaining to urgent and exigent circumstances and I don't know, they're urgent and exigent. And then just ED on daily administrative matters. I don't know if that's helpful, but I just a suggestion.
Say that again.
Just sort of adding pertaining to urgent or exigent circumstances. And then sort of the ED, the primary de facto spokesperson on daily administrative matters. Again, just food for thought, maybe not, but. I mean, I like where we're going in terms of finding the balance of urgent circumstances, Did
you not like general matters? Was that too broad for you?
I think it's okay. It's just a matter of,
I understand the concern with that phrasing.
yeah,
And
we have to put some protection in there for the seat.
right, and so if number 3, which will be 2, says that all commissioners serve as official agency spokespersons, whom they speak on behalf of commission items that have been fully vetted and approved, et cetera. Does that alleviate your concerns about a chair that might say, no, only I get to speak on that?
Can you say that again?
So if you look at number 2,
Mhm.
as we've revised it, essentially, we've put 2 and 3 together
Mhm.
so that it reads, all commissioners
Mhm.
serve as official agency spokespersons who may speak on behalf of the commission on items that have been fully vetted and approved, and then it keeps going.
Mhm.
And so if the one beneath that said, either the commissioners acknowledge or just start with the chair is the de facto spokesperson on urgent and general matters, and the executive director is the de facto spokesperson on commission administrative matters, do those 2 combined satisfy your concern about kind of a runaway media chair. Because that, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what,
That's the reality of it.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what other people think.
But if those two are both there right up as 2 and 3, would that constrain someone?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what my colleagues think.
And then Bruce is adding to that proposal, moving number 11 to be number 5. Or what would actually be number 4.
I think 11 is a lot. 11 now is confusing in my mind, but I think there needs to be something added to the commissioners acknowledge the chair. Like, I think something needs to be added there that says, I'll just say the scenario because I don't have the words quite yet, about the chair still needs to, like, not being able to make a statement on a policy matter on behalf of the commission that has not been voted and approved. Because that is something, you know, when I think 11 was, we created 11 because of that.
Yeah,
scenario.
yeah.
But the language in 11 is a little funky.
There's a lot in 11, but I
Yeah.
think, I'm looking at the version, I think you put it together, Susan, I think it's almost the same when commissioners are discussing an issue, I think it's pretty much the same.
That hasn't changed, but
Okay.
I think there's another thing that you're talking about. This one seems like you're at an event and you want to give a talk about
Right.
social consumption.
Sure.
And you start by saying, this is my opinion.
Yeah,
not-"
exactly.
But it sounds like there's also a statement that says, no commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission for not yet approved policy, something like that. I think
Unless
that's,
on their own capacity.
but will not speak on behalf of the commission.
Yeah.
Unless it is approved by a vote of the commission.
Or otherwise provided for in this document, because if you
Yeah.
don't, then that, what we just talked about for the chair for general matters, it contradicts one another.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I agree with that language, but also saying unless, you know,
okay,
there's
so,
vote or otherwise provided
yeah.
for here.
so it's no commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission. It's really speaking about a policy, right? Okay, no commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission regarding an unapproved, regarding a policy that has not yet been voted favorably voted.
Are you writing number 11, Susan?
No, I'm doing another one, because I think 11 is, you're at a public event and you're speaking about your opinion. Right, and this sounds like another scenario where you've had the experience, I'm guessing, of someone saying, this is the commission's position on X, and there has never been a vote, an affirmative vote taken on X.
Yes.
Is that the scenario that we're trying to?
Yeah.
No commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission regarding a policy that has not been affirmatively voted.
We defining de facto. Is de facto, doesn't that really mean when no one else is available to speak? Isn't that how de facto is being used?
Unless otherwise.
After hearing that, I don't think it's needed. I don't think you need it unless otherwise, now that you said it out loud.
All right,
Because the concern I have is if general matters fall into something I don't, it's separate.
Does the facto mean, Debbie, is your question?
Yeah.
okay, so let's get back to that, but does everybody want this addition? No commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission regarding a policy that has not been affirmatively voted on by the commission.
Read that again, sorry.
No commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission regarding a policy that has not, maybe it's just has not been approved through by an affirmative vote of 3 commissioners. Because that's the language we use everywhere else. Because it says here, maybe it just goes here, number 3, all commissioners may speak on behalf of the commission on items that have been fully vetted and approved by an affirmative vote of commissioners. So maybe it's no commissioner will speak on behalf of the commission on items
Oh, you have one.
that have not been fully vetted and approved by the commissioners, by an affirmative vote of 3 commissioners.
So you're adding that into the, what is now 2 and 3 combined?
I'm just making it another item. And you can tell me what number you want it to be.
Is that what we already do now?
But I think that I read 11 as covering that,
Yeah.
not just for appearances, but any public and media interaction that I have. Put that disclaimer out there.
11 says, when the commissioners are discussing an issue for which there is no approved commission policy or communications in their individual capacity or in a capacity other than as a commissioner, and there is reasonable likelihood that their audience may assume or perceive that they are speaking on behalf of the commission. Commissioners will preface their written or verbal communication with the following disclaimer. Blah, 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 blah.
So the reason why we started talking about this new language is because that if this were the way that 11 reads now, it contradicts the language we just went through with the chair on urgent and general matters, because those would not be commission approved. Those are not things that
Okay, so we're
we
talking
can
about
vote on. So it does not encompass.
separate, it's
So
separate.
what I'm saying is like, if we're saying that this applies throughout, then what it's saying is that it invalidates the chair's ability to make those sort of
Yeah,
communications.
yeah.
So are you saying we have to get rid of 11 in place of what I said, or do
I
we
think
have
we
to?
only, so it depends on how we're reading it. If 11 only it accounts for like speaking engagements or we're, doing channels or something like that. I don't think that the rub is at least at as much there, but if we're saying it applies generally to everything, there's a problem with 11. And I'm open to a conversation just to figure out maybe we could tweak it, but
I think,
What if we try this on, I'm back on what is, I guess, our new report. The commission acknowledges that the chair is the de facto spokesperson on behalf of the commission for urgent and timely matters and not policy
General
matters.
matters, because I think people do like to. Urgent and general matters, is that not?
policy matters not voted on.
Just saying, behalf of the commission on urgent and timely matters.
we eliminated timely to general now.
Oh, general, okay. But not policy matters. Why don't we just put that in? Add it right at that part.
It's really broad. The policy matters can be, I guess I'm thinking of scenarios. I'm going, I usually try to play out scenarios in my head.
I mean, the thing here is that you don't want the runaway bride, right?
I know, and that's why we were starting to develop
Yeah.
that language.
I think that was
Okay.
the rub, right? All
It
this.
feels like we're trying to do 3 different
Yeah.
things at once.
Yeah, and then the number 11, Chair, I know what you're saying, I know why we developed it, but this is also, we talked a lot about this in terms of like me as an independent commissioner going up to the State House, talking about an item or something, or,
That's right.
X, Y, and Z. I should say, hey, I'm here to support this policy matter on my own as an individual commissioner. So I think this protects all of us from any shenanigans. And if you are supporting a policy, then you're speaking on your behalf. So I think that's 11 by itself.
I think what,
I need to give an example.
I think what the chair is suggesting is that 11 contradicts what is becoming 4. And that's her concern.
Can I chime in really
Well,
quick?
I gotta get a thought out before I lose the thought.
Of course.
The thought, I gave an example about the DPH. I think that's policy. If there's a question about, well, you know, what is the commission? Have you read this? What is your, you know, opinion here? What is the, like, that is, even though it's not a regulatory thing and it's not